Hey, hardworking Christian mom, welcome to the Victorious Working Mom. Do you want more time and less mom guilt? Do you find yourself up late at night searching time, productivity, and life hacks? Do you wake up with big ambitious goals only to feel like you're dropping the ball or missing the important stuff when life happens and everyone needs you again? Hey, I'm Dr. Naka. I too was trying to do all the things at home and work and burning out. I too felt overworked and underappreciated and wished to hide or escape and get a much needed break. I wanted to be present at home, productive at work, and be calm and rested, but I kept telling myself this is what it is to be a working mom and I had to suck it up and deal. Until I found God's power to be present and set priorities. In this podcast, you will find time, space, and support so that you will be less busy, less cranky, and less lonely. So get comfy in your hiding place from your kids and let's grow, glow, and go.
Hello, hello, my lovelies. This is Dr. Neka, and you're listening to another episode of Victorious Working Mom Podcast. This is not a car edition. We're inside, and fun fact, it's an interview today. We have a very special guest who is this is going to be kind of a mix of faith and physiology. I do have a fellow physician here. Now, I got to warn you before I introduce her that we're just two physician moms having a conversation. You have not entered into a working relationship with us. This is not a substitute for medical care. So anything that we say that might be medical is meant to be edutainment, educational, and entertaining. This is the Nacho rule being invoked. We nacho doctor. You go get your own doctor. This is just a podcast interview. So just that being said, we have Dr. Evka Sesnick. She is a family physician with a practice in New Jersey, an online course creator, a speaker, and a best-selling author. She's a thought leader on topics with which she has both professional and personal experience. She does worldwide consults on pediatric feeding challenges, food allergies, and babies with colic. Her goal is to empower parents with a sense of control and strategy that helps remove some of the overwhelm. Yay! Welcome.
Yay!
Oh,
Thank you so much
this has been,
for
I've been
having
looking
me.
forward
And
to
that's
this.
like I know, because we go way back, and
Yeah.
we just have such a loving collegiate relationship where we just like talk about life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
of course we're physicians, but we're
Yes.
also moms. And we are human beings, and we struggle with the same things that everybody else struggles with. And it's not just like with parenting and trying to be the best
Mm-hmm.
moms they can be, but also like with our careers and our jobs and how to follow more in Christ's footsteps and all of that stuff. Like, we're trying to be a lot of different things. And it's so good when you can into fellowship with other moms and just like discuss stuff and like have your voices be heard and share stories and share experiences. Well, sometimes, of course, medical knowledge because we are physicians, but even here, it's just a conversation. And like you said, um, we're not your doctors if you're listening to this. We are just having a conversation and you just happen to be listening in. So thank you for listening to our conversation. And
Yeah.
happy holidays.
Yes.
Whoever's listening, happy holidays. There's so many holidays are coming up, right? So like Thanksgiving and Kwanzaa and Diwali and Christmas and New Year's. Happy holidays to all those.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening.
So, I mean, let's dive
So,
in. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to get you up to date. I know last time we were talking, I had written, gosh, I keep writing books. So I had written the book about food allergies, the FPIE's handbook,
Okay.
a research-based guide to food protein-induced enterocolitis syndrome, and really discusses all food allergies, but there was a focus on that FPIEs. And then I had written a book, a whole bunch of books, but my most recent one is about babies with colic who just cry and cry and cry, and like for many, many, many hours a day for days and days and weeks, and it's really hard for the families because their cries, like, you know, they sound like they're constantly in pain. It's really hard for the families. Like, if you're having a child with
Mhm.
colic, or you've had a child with colic who just has that cry, the wailing, the painful cry, like, you want help because it's really, really hard to listen to.
Yes.
And I have another book that's going to be coming out about children with pediatric feeding disorders. So there's a lot of books in my head, and over time, hopefully I'll get them out there, and hopefully they'll help families who are struggling with this kind of stuff, because I think these fields need more help and more advice.
So what really
And
drew? Oh, go ahead.
they're a good topic to have for the holidays, right? Like, to
Hmm.
talk about all of those food stuff and feeding related stuff. Because what do families do when they get together? To celebrate the holidays. They eat food together, right? Food brings
Yeah.
everyone together. Traditions are based all around food and what you're eating at this holiday meal.
Yes. And I just
Mm.
really love that you're talking about this, because food brings people together, and food is like the first early ways that a lot of parents, in particular mothers, bond with their children and feel like we're meeting their need for food, for shelter, and all that. So if there's an issue with your baby or your child eating, it really can gnaw away or really create a lot of stress, overwhelm, anxiety, for despair for parents, because a basic thing that everybody wants to be able to do is feed their children. And if they're seeing that they're having a problem, that can create frustration, shame, and then add the holidays or family gatherings, that adds more opinions and sometimes conflict. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. It's so true on so many different levels. So when you're a parent, like, one of your first things that you want to do is make sure that your baby lives, right? Survives. You want to try to do the best you can for them. But you want them to grow developmentally. But you also kind of want some of these basics to be taken care of. And so one of those basics is, like, you want your child to breathe, right? Really important too. And feeding is right up there too. You have to feed to live. And some babies and some children are born with significant challenges around food, whether that is that they have all these food allergies, or they have feeding challenges where they just struggle with feeding, and it's hard to get them to eat, and they could be potentially, might be spending hours every day just trying to get them to eat. So you might offer them like a little bit of food, and they might not take it in, or it might take forever just to be able to ingest. Chewing may take a long time, or they may eat the food and a whole variety of foods and have reactions to them with like gastrointestinal symptoms, or with rashes, or trouble breathing. And the hard. It's very time consuming when you have a child that you have to spend such a long time feeding, because they chew so long. They just don't want to put that food in their mouth. If it's the bottle or the breast, it just like they suck slowly and don't seem to get enough. And you want to like feed them adequate amounts, because again, feeding is living. Or you wind up spending a whole bunch of time on this because they have food allergies. Initially, they may only have a certain number of foods that are safe for them. And if you go into the store, nowadays, so much of what we buy in the store is processed, and it has
Hmm.
all kinds of ingredients in it. And children may be, and adults, like, may be allergic to some of those ingredients. Or those foods may be from a plant or manufacturing plant where other foods also are made, and there could be cross contaminants with the food that they're allergic to. And so you want the families whose children really struggle with food allergies may spend time um, cooking their own meals and making their own meals from scratch. And that, especially when they're busy and they're trying to feed their child and they're trying to maybe they have other children and they're trying to work, do a whole bunch. Um, Finding that time to make meals from scratch can be hard. And um, you go and you want to have holidays with family and you want to get together. And the expectation for babies and even young children is still you sit around the table, especially parents or like the adults, they all have a meal together. That meal can last for a long time. And for children too, there's this expectation that they kind of sit around the table as well for as long as they can and enjoy the meal with the family for the holidays. And what if you can't do that? What if you can't spend the time doing this traditional thing, which is sharing this longer meal together because you're spending so much time feeding your child? Or there are things at that table, at that dinner table, that the child may be allergic to.
Yeah. You really touched
And
on a lot. Yeah. If I could just interject, because you're really touching to a lot of, I mean, like sometimes this is like a private pain for people that, especially adding on being this show is geared towards working parents. That's a lot of time to research and figure out what your child's allergic to prepare meals at home, especially if you work long hours, especially outside the home. If you're a single parent or if you're co-parenting and there's two different diets going on in one house versus another. I mean, I can only imagine what the scenarios that you've encountered in practice because of that.
there's like, it can be really stressful for families. Um, Sometimes when you have a child has a food allergies, for instance, and families are not really sure what the food culprit is. They just know that the child has these symptoms. Maybe they have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, rashes, and they're associated with food, but they can't quite pinpoint which food it is. They may go on something called like a partial elimination diet. So, partial elimination diet may consist of the child maybe going on like even like an amino acid formula or an amino acid type food, or maybe just a few foods that they're kind of exposed to, like a couple proteins, a couple starches, and a couple vegetables, and then you add on from there. The problem is that children need variety. Um, and they need to be exposed to different tastes, different textures. There's like a developmental windows for learning how to chew appropriately. There's a specific age at which if children don't learn how to chew appropriately and they aren't exposed to as many tastes by that age, later on they'll have a harder time learning to chew. They'll have a harder time being exposed to other foods and being comfortable with them. Like when they're babies, the more foods you can expose them to, and the more taste, the more textures, the more later on when they're like 3, 4, 5 years old, the more likely they are going to be like willing to try different foods. And so you don't want picky eaters in your family, and so you want that variety. And it's easier to do variety if you can just like go to a store, like let's say you want to make noodles, like let's say you want to make macaroni and cheese, like easy food for children, macaroni and cheese. So like if your child doesn't have food allergies, um, or significant like feeding challenges, you might just be able to like go to the store, buy like a package of um, macaroni and cheese, that like a healthier version that you can just put in the microwave and then put in front of your child, and there it's done. But if you're
Yeah.
having food allergies, that macaroni and cheese, well, what does it consist of? Well, there's dairy in it, so your child might be allergic to dairy. And so you can't use dairy. What do you use instead? There's alternatives to dairy that can also give you the taste of like that cheese taste in the macaroni and cheese. But a lot of the fat, you're starting off with raw ingredients that you buy in the store and you mash it up together, you mix it up together to give you that cheesy taste. And the same thing with your noodles. Like, okay, so maybe you can't have noodles because wheat can be an allergen. And so what do you try instead? You might uh, well, I guess you could do like a buckwheat or quinoa noodles. There's some manufacturers that create, if your child's not allergic to that, that create buckwheat and quinoa as the only ingredient in their noodles. So if your child doesn't like that, then you're left again trying to figure out what the child can eat and um, potentially creating your noodles from scratch. And this takes up a lot of time. If your child has feeding challenges, if they are a picky eater where they are limited in what they want, they just don't want to eat a lot of stuff, maybe macaroni and cheese is one of the only things you can feed them. Maybe because they don't want to have a lot of other varieties. And so you're kind of stuck making these foods in different ways, spend a lot of time just like cooking for them, making foods in different ways, just so that they can eat it without having a reaction and get the nutrients they need. Like if your child only eats macaroni and cheese, they won't touch vegetables. You might have to figure out a way to sneak vegetables into that macaroni and cheese without the child even noticing. And again, it takes more time.
Yeah.
And so
And
as
mhm.
a busy mom, like where do you find the time for this? You know, like I think sometimes like moms when they have children, they want like we have to read stories to them. We have to get in the bath. We have to make sure that they don't get into trouble. And like, where do you find the time to spend taking your raw ingredients, making foods from it on a pretty regular basis? Some of the suggestions I have for families who are encountering that is maybe uh, like food should be fun. So spend that time with your child in the kitchen, if getting them to like touching the food and playing with the food while you're making it. So give yourselves like a joint cooking session and create the foods at that point if they're willing. Because then you're doing a joint family activity, you're keeping them busy, you can keep an eye on it, you're giving them that food exposure, and you're still able to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point that food should be fun. And it made me think, a lot of us get stuck in, we have this rigid image of what we think motherhood should be like. And, I'll pick this perfect meal, my children will eat it and appreciate it. And, we think it's going to be Leave It to Beaver or something. And it's like, real life can be messy. And, sometimes we shoo our kids away too much because we think we'll do it faster on our own, but doing it with them, that's also quality time. So you don't have to always separate things. You can, just have them around you and see what you're doing. I think that's also a nice reassurance that raise the kid you have, not necessarily the fantasy child. And your fantasy child might not have food allergies or a feeding issue, but your real child does. So, that sometimes accepting the reality, grieving the fantasy, but also adapting to your situation, so that food, because it's not going the way you want it to go, or your child is having a difficulty, then you make it an issue. How much do you think it's in the challenge of, dealing with the feeding disorder or feeding issue is on the parents' mindset or beliefs about it versus what is actually happening to the child?
Oh gosh, I think it's really hard. So I wanted to bring up a couple of points for you. The first point, it has to do with tradition. So sometimes, again, the holidays, going into the holiday season, think traditions. Unfortunately, so many of our, fortunately, depends on how you think about it, so many of our traditions around holidays have to do with food. So some of those traditions can also consist of cooking together and preparing meals together, especially if you're limited in how long the child will actually sit down in front of a meal, and you still want to have that feeding experience, or you want to get the whole family together to be doing something fun together during the holidays. One of the things that it might be helpful is like maybe the whole family spends a moment cooking together. Maybe the aunt, the uncle, and everybody else gets together and cooks, and that becomes a tradition. Now, the other question you asked had to do with like how much of feeding disorders are based, like when does a child have an actual feeding disorder versus when do the parents just think that the child has a feeding disorder where they don't actually have a feeding disorder? And that is a really good question. Like, how do you know that your child is just a picky eater versus how do you know that the child really has a pediatric feeding disorder? Because there's a difference. And one of the resources I'd like you to check out, I probably could have a link on my website, is Feeding Matters. It's an organization that deals with feeding challenges. And they actually have a questionnaire that asks, how old is your child? And based upon the age of your child, you're asked to answer a whole bunch of questions about their feeding behavior. And based upon how they answer, you can get a better sense of, is this just picky eating or are we talking about disorder? Because there's certain answers that you'll give if it's more of a disorder. So examples of feeding disorders, just to give you the sense, would be if your child chokes after eating or coughs after eating. If it takes them, like they're 1 year old, and to eat a small meal takes them over 40 minutes, that could be a concern. If your child is really limited in what they will eat, where their food choices or what they're willing to eat may be only four different kinds of meals, like maybe macaroni and cheese and maybe banana and some applesauce and beans, and that's all they'll have, and that's it. Then it might be more of a disorder. Also, with disorders, children might take a long time to feed, or they might start to struggle with their weight, where their weight isn't going up like it should be, or how you'd expect. But for those families who are curious, go on feedingmatters.com. There's a feeding questionnaire to ask families, and then they give you resources about what to do if you're concerned that your child has a pediatric feeding disorder. And there's various types of therapies. I'm trained in a number of them because my own child has feeding challenges. So I was in the trenches with everybody, and so doing that process. The lucky thing I was able to do, because I'm a physician, is I was able to take courses with some of the speech language pathologists, and I get the training. So, yeah, I think that if you have concerns, you can also reach out to me. If your child has feeding challenges, you can reach out to me, and I can help guide you.
And what's the best way for them to reach out to you, Doc?
So very good question. Probably email. So Eva Cessnick, MD @gmail.com or Dr. Evka @yahoo.com works. I have a website. Just go on evkamd.com, and there's a contact form just right there on the website, and they can reach out to me directly and book a consult.
Yes, and that
or
will
like
be linked in the
read one of
website.
my books.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yes. So
Thank you.
evkamd.com, but we will have a profile page for Dr. Evka on www.victoriausworkingmom.com, and then we'll have the her links in our show notes for this episode. Yes, I
Absolutely. Thank
wanted
you.
to ask you, how do you find time to write all these books? Like you're busy. How do you find the time?
Yeah, I'm seeing patients and I'm a mom. So this is going to sound pretty interesting for me, but I was a physician for about a decade, and I was seeing patients for about a decade before my daughter was born. And so I gave up lots and lots and lots of advice, lots of families about all kinds of stuff. And I'm a family physician, so I saw everybody. And when my child had food allergies and feeding challenges and colic and all this stuff, I realized that there was actually a limit to my medical knowledge and how much information I could share with families. And I felt like I wanted to know more. And I have all these questions because now, like to give advice during a 15-minute visit, I realized you only touch the surface of the type of advice you may want to be giving. And so I realized that there were a lot of unanswered questions that I didn't even have the answers to as a physician. And like, I felt scared and I felt alone and I felt frustrated and I felt like there must be a better way. And so I started reading all the literature that was available on a particular topic. And I was looking at it both from the perspective of mom and as a physician. And I was just trying to like answer my own questions. And that while I was answering my own questions, I realized that I didn't have to just answer them for myself. I could answer them for other people as well. So one of my goals is to be the best parent I can be. And I will stay up for hours for my child. I will, I will get much less sleep if it makes a difference when it comes to the outcome of how she's doing and how well she's doing and how much I can help her. So, when there's a will, there's a way. And I felt so called to do this. But can I tell you a little miracle story about sometimes I feel like I'm being called to do this, and I'll share my story of one of the things that happened when I was writing my first book.
Hmm.
So it was called the FPIE's Handbook. It was about food protein-induced enterocolitis syndrome because at that point it was a new diagnosis. There were few specialists throughout the country who were involved in it and who knew a lot about it. And the guidelines for how to treat it, they were still trying to figure them out. And some of the guidelines had just come out, but there's still so much information that I need to know because I need to treat my daughter correctly. And so here I am, and I'm as a physician. I think I'm before I was a physician, I did engineering, and I have this mathematical mind. I am so much not an author. But I felt this need to help my child and to help others as well. But I was so busy parenting and I was so busy working that the only time I had to write the book was between the hours of 11 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning because I need to get some sleep too. And with my FPIE's handbook, there was this series of events that kind of forced me, because I was working with my co-author and she had a deadline, so when it had to be submitted, the book, I had a month to write this book. It was this 250, 300-page book, 300-page book. And I could only do it during those hours. And and I was exhausted and I was tired. And so how do you do this? And so every day before I wrote it, I would pray. I would go, Dear Lord, I'm doing this. I'm writing this book. And I'm not just writing it for me and to help my child. I'm writing it to be able to help lots of other families. Will you help me? Will you help me to write the best book I can so that lots of families are benefited and this work becomes something that makes a profound difference in people's lives? And I would pray like that while I was writing it, and I would pray like that before I was writing it. And I wrote the book in about a month, and the words kind of flew through me. It was so interesting. Like I'd be there at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was so tired, and I just write and write and write, and the words just kind of came out onto the piece of paper. And I don't think that the words just came from me. I feel like maybe there's something more out there. Like maybe God was able to kind of like help in some way, because like the book came out and it's been considered like one of the best books in its field when it comes to pediatric food allergies. And it sold like it was like #1 bestseller in pediatrics for a while, and it's still up there in terms of pediatric books. And like me, the non-writer, how could I do that? How could I do that in a month? And so I think that there's forces out there, and there's a Lord out there, and he just like he helps us when we need to, when he helps our children, and as I do this, as I write these books, I feel a calling to it, like this stuff needs to happen, and it needs to happen so that families don't feel as scared or as alone, as frustrated, and as helpless as I once did as a physician. So I don't
Yeah,
know. I
that's
just
such a
like
powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so encouraging, that it's not about what's letting God use us, not about, oh, am I a trained, and nothing wrong with those that are trained writers, but you had a message, you had something to share, you used something that was painful or overwhelming to you to help give, support and certainty to other people. I think that's it is a miracle story.
yeah, and like the other books I'm writing too, they're just because I know what it's like to be there. I know how hard it was for me, and I just want to give other people guidance and knowledge so that they can get like the best, like like that we reach. Sometimes it's really interesting when you are dealing with certain medical topics is you reach the limit of how much we know. Like
Mhm.
you've read all the research studies and you've read all of them, and you have all these questions that you still don't have answers for. But now that you've reached the boundaries of what we know in terms of clinical medicine. And why not share that with people so that they too can reach the boundaries, like the most updated research findings that I could find. And why does we share those with other people in a way that's easy for them to understand? In a way, because sometimes like these research studies are written so that like only like a medical person or a scientist can be able to understand them well. But you can simplify it, and you can make it easier for everyone to understand. So that if you are then reading this stuff, or you're trying to understand it, at least you know that you're getting the most available information, like the most updated information that you can at the time. And so then, if there's still questions you have, or there's still like things that you're not sure about, at least you know that you did the best you could, and you've reached the boundaries of modern medicine. There's really very little left to know.
Good. Wow. So, what would you say to that mom that's like, okay, from what you're saying, I think my child's having an issue, and I've done my 15-minute visit with um, the pediatrician or the family doc, you know, where do I go from here? So is it to your website? Like, how would you help me? Because you named a lot of things about the deciding how to approach eating, how to manage or make substitutions for holidays, and cultural foods. What would a mom that's going through this or a parent that's going through this get when they work with you?
Gosh. So I think when you're struggling and you only have like those short periods of time with a pediatrician, and sometimes the pediatrician may not have, or the family physician may not have as much training to be able to answer things incredibly like to the level that you need them answered to. I think that you become the expert in your own child. And then what you do is you join the community. So you join communities of other families who are going through the same thing. And one of the things I offer on my website is I have a community for families who are going through similar challenges with the food allergies and feeding challenges. They bring us all together. So you want to join communities so you don't feel so alone. Then you also want to read, read or take courses, because sometimes I think courses even are a little bit better than books. Like I've been writing a lot of books, but courses are good because one of the things when you're stressed and overwhelmed, sometimes it's hard to be able to focus on a book and get all the information that you need out of the book just because there's so much other stuff that you're worried about. And so it's easier if you can have information presented to you both in written form and in audio form, and there's audio visuals, and you see things, and there's like you get a whole experience instead of just a reading experience. Like this sight, sounds. Like the course offers so many different other modalities for learning stuff. And so take courses if need be on what's troubling your child, on some of your concerns. Read the books. Um, Join communities so you don't feel so alone. And then just keep going back, going back to the medical professional um, until you get the answers that you're looking for.
Yes, I really like that you
The right thing,
emphasize that they are the expert on their kids, like empowering the parent, not, overwhelming, added to the overwhelm or judgment. It's empowering them to be able to, face this head on.
yes, advocate for your child. Sometimes, like some of the things I've noticed is sometimes when you have a child who has a lot of teething challenges, but they're growing okay, and the family and like the health professionals might not be there to see exactly moment to moment, or the family member might not be there moment to moment to see exactly what's going on and how bad those feeding challenges are. They might doubt you, or they might not believe you, and they say, "Oh, the child really isn't having such feeding challenges. Look how well they're growing." And if you think that your child really is struggling with feeding, trust that. Don't let other families or other people poo poo that for you and make it a non issue. Because if the feeding challenges, you're noticing the feeding challenges, you know your child best. They're probably there. And then get the help you need. And then again, community, courses, books, feeding therapy, doctor's visits. It's a it's a lot of people that you can get uh, helping you. And you can help yourself too. But don't deny what's going on. Trust yourself, even if other people are doubting you or just how serious the thing is, because you know your child best. You are the expert in your child. Believe in that intuition that you have over things, because it's not gonna. Most of the time, it's not going to steer you wrong.
Yeah. Oh, this is really great stuff. Um, Dr. Evka, thank you so much for your time. We're looking out for the book, the Babies with Colic. You said that's coming out, or that one book is already out?
That one's out. So the ones that are already out,
Uh-huh.
gosh, I'm like, there's another one that's about to come out.
Okay. The
So
pediatric feeding disorders. Okay.
that's going to be coming out. The colic one's been out since like many months now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been actually teaching other doctors based upon my books. I've been doing like these presentations to physicians
wow.
throughout the country. And yeah, just trying to get them to like, because I've read everything there is about colic. Like literally, I was at this huge research, like so many research studies I read, and I summarized it all in the book. So now that I have all that information, there's a lot more about colic and babies that cry and cry that we don't know, and it's all in the book. And so it kind of explains it in a way that I don't think it's been explained before. And prevention, treatment, what can you predict about child's future if they have colic, like all this stuff that you should know, and you can help to prevent colic. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in your child, and there's things you can do, and so it's a good book for that. And then I have one about pediatric feeding disorders coming out, so I'm writing them as quickly as I can, and they're all in my head, and they're based upon my experiences, and I just don't want you to be in the same place I once was.
Yes.
So
So is
we're all a
is your
community.
website the best way to order the books, or what's the best way for us to get your books?
Oh, Amazon.
Okay.
You can get them on Amazon. And if you want my courses, go to my website. And I'm seeing patients. I'm consulting in patients right now, actually throughout the world. I've like just spoke to a family in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so if you want to reach out to me, I'm available. Just go on my website, evkamd.com, and reach me that way.
Okay, so we know what to add to the stocking stuffer. So, we can give that mom that's going through, the feeding disorder, get her the babies with colic book, So sometimes we're trying to give people old wise tales. Let's just get the evidence-based research, but in a relatable way from Dr. Evka. And I really love the point that you said earlier about fellowship with moms, about, building that confidence and, learning your child and, creating a family life, especially mealtime that can honor, culture and tradition, but also, honors where you're at, where you're at and where your child is at, and have being grounded in support and evidence. Don't feel like you just have to wing it on your own, because you can find weird stuff on the internet if you don't have any knowledge or base to filter it out. And when we're already pressed for time, overwhelmed, I think most of us, we want the real deal. If I'm going to spend the time to read something, I want it to be, this is information I can trust to make an educated and informed decision. So you can find myself and Dr. Evka in the Christian Professional Mom Facebook community. Gotta plug it. You can come in and, lay burdens down, or just have a little laugh, a little pick me up, just a little bit of encouragement. And then you can also go to Evka, EVKAMD.com. And we are going to all follow Dr. Evka on Amazon so we can be alerted with all her new books and pre-order and support her. And then you can also go to our website for her courses.
And I just put a plug in for you because I've known you for years now. And we've gone through some deep, deep stuff together because of just like the stressors we've experienced. And you've always been such a good source of support. Like, you're such a good listener. You have an incredible heart. You just really, really care about other people. And you're in this to make a difference. You're in this to make a difference for others. So that where you're coming from and all you do is so selfless. And it's so based on you just wanting like other families not to struggle and to feel closer to the Lord, closer to each other, and to really have that fellowship. So you're just like, you're an incredible source of support. And I think people need to know that. So I can say you're an incredible source of support because you've been one for me.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Wow. Give me
That's the
emotional.
truth.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, Victoria's Working Mom is a labor of love, and really don't want, just like you didn't want you going through something and you like, well, I'm finding answers for me. Why not share this with others? I definitely feel in the journey, being a woman of faith, um, working full time and being a mom, sometimes there's a lot of lonely or isolating situations. And I know my faith really helped me through. So I think just wanting to share it in a real and relatable way, um, because we're all on a journey. We're all on a
Oh, we
journey. We're all
are. We
facing a
are.
challenge. And just to normalize it, like nobody has it perfect. Everybody's facing something, and we look at the wealthy celebrities, you don't know what they face in trying to keep their kids safe, the security needs, everyone has an issue. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's getting out of this scot-free. No one's on easy street, but God is good, and he meets us at our point of need,
Yes.
and he provides for us
Yeah.
in abundance. So definitely, if anybody has a child with a feeding challenge, you know that you have a resource to go to. um, she is the expert in babies with colic, pediatric feeding disorders. So you will not be disappointed if you have a consultation with her, um, to get some evidence-based, practical strategies and solutions. You do not have to suffer in silence. You don't have to fight your family over the holidays. Um, so thank you so much. So do you have, if any of these books so the books can include recipes as well?
That's a new one that's coming up. So, oh my goodness, that's
Ooh.
2 books. That's 2 books from now, and I'm already
Oh,
collaborating on that. And
wow.
I already have a look. Yeah, you are so good. So yes, first time on air. Yeah, it's I've on my in my recipe because I'm doing the recipes myself and I'm cooking them and taking the photos and stuff.
Oh, wow. We're getting
So
exclusive.
yes,
Exclusive. That
because
is
that's what you need,
amazing.
right? Like you need
Mhm,
if you're gonna have your mac and cheese, you need the most allergen-free mac and
mhm.
cheese done in as many ways as possible,
Right.
and like with shortcuts. Like, is there shortcuts you can do so you don't
Mhm.
have to be spending like hours upon hours in the kitchen? So.
Right,
Like
right.
one of the things I realized recently, instead of baking potatoes, you can microwave potatoes. You can make some pretty good pasta
Mhm.
in your microwave. You don't have
Okay.
to necessarily wait for the water to boil.
Yeah.
They have these ways that you
Oh,
can
that's
make pretty
cool.
quick
I mean, because I
pasta
know
in the
not
microwave. So
everybody
like
uses a
ways to get
crock
ready for
pot and
faster.
things like that, the air
That's
fryer and
right.
stuff. So it gets, because not, just because someone's a parent, I mean, everybody's not, big on cooking. And then, if you're from certain ethnic groups, you're used to different types of food. So, I mean, sometimes, like my family's from Nigeria, and sometimes what me and my siblings ate wasn't always what my dad ate. Um, so you're trying to appease sometimes different generations and different cultures. So I
Yeah.
think it's definitely very helpful to take the anxiety and the overwhelm out, because we want to know that we can conquer this thing, and have victory no matter what we're facing. Dr. Evka, thank you so much out of your busy schedule that you chose to talk with us today. And I know that you've encouraged somebody that feel like they're suffering in silence. And thank you that you turned your test into a testimony. And it is going to help a lot of families. So again, you see
Oh,
Dr.
thank
Evka
you.
follow her on social media. And what are your social media habits? You told us the website, but what's your
Oh my goodness.
IG?
I was and I was just going to share the stories. Like sometimes in your life, you have these moments where are really, really, really hard.
Hmm.
Where it's like you, and like when you have a child who's really struggling feeding, it can be a really hard moment in your life because, like, you want your like feeding can equal survival, right?
Hmm.
And um, like so it can be a really, really tough moment in your life, and you can take that tough moment and feel sorry for yourself, or you can take that tough moment to create a community around yourself. Um, that and to increase your faith in the Lord, because eventually things will get better with your child. And like I remember when we were first starting out with mine, like friendships that I formed in those early stages when feeding was so hard. I still have those friends to this day, and the reason I have those friends is because we went through something together that few other people could completely understand, and it brought us so tightly together in this feeling of like, look at what we conquered, look at what we're dealing with together, and it's so beautiful. And like it's all about community, and it's about feeling like not only hopefully that the Lord has your back, but you also have each other's back.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of social media, Instagram, I'm Evka MD, website evkamd.com, Reflux Physician for the Facebook group, LinkedIn, I'm Evka MD, and on Amazon, I'm Evka Chestnut MD.
Okay, so do you have a
Or Eva
Facebook
Chestnut
group?
MD.
So you guys is getting our
Yeah, lots of
Facebook
them.
group. Yeah.
And we're going to have a book club. So a book club where once a week we go over a book
Oh, wow.
about parenting. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
ladies, you don't have to
Yeah,
do it
it's like a good way to
alone.
get together.
You don't have to do it alone. You don't even have to bring up a casserole or anywhere. If ain't nobody's, selling you Tupperware, you can just get online and do the book club.
Oh my goodness. Why not, right?
All right. Well, it's
I'm
been a
hoping to get
pleasure.
some
Yeah.
authors.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Happy holidays. Oh my goodness. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. God, to talk to you.
Okay. Yes, it is a pleasure to talk to
It's
you.
so wonderful.
All right,
It's
you
a
all, you've
pleasure. And
listened
we'll
to
talk
another
again
episode.
soon.
Yes, you've listened to another episode of Victorious Working Mom podcast. You be blessed. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Victorious Working Mom podcast. If this podcast episode has blessed you, kept you company, please feel free to like, review, and follow and share with a fellow working mom. You can connect on IG at Victorious Working Mom, on Facebook, Neka Ichoku, DOMPH, and our website, www.victoriousworkingmom.com. Feel free to join the Christian Professional Mom community, and let's continue to grow, glow, and go. Be blessed.